Have you tried growing potatoes? They're a prolific calorie crop with great storage capabilities. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 reasons why you should be growing potatoes in containers, not in the garden. Stay tuned. Hey fellow garden gnomes, this is Brittany. Welcome back to my channel where I take you guys along with me on my journey to self-sustainability. This will be my 3rd year planting my potatoes in containers. I used to plant them in the garden, as I think many gardeners do, but I ended up switching to containers for specifically 4 reasons. Reason number 1 is the fact that it is easier to control the texture and the contents of the soil mix in a container. When you're planting your potatoes in the ground, you kind of have to just deal with whatever soil is in your ground, which if you have a well-amended garden might not be too big of an issue, but because of the way that potatoes grow under the ground, I think that you are much more likely to get a larger harvest if the soil mix that the potatoes are planted in have a very light and fluffy consistency, which might be harder to get when you're dealing with the garden. In containers, of course, you can make a mix of, say, half and half manure and coconut coir, and you get a much fluffier soil that the potatoes might have an easier time expanding into. Reason number 2 is that it's easier on your back. Not only do you avoid having to dig a trench for your seed potatoes to be planted in, but you also avoid digging up the potatoes at the end of the season. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 where your back gets a break. With container potatoes, of course, harvesting is as simple as dumping your container on a tarp or on an existing garden and sorting through the soil that comes out. Reason number 3 is that you end up getting all of the potatoes when you harvest. Potatoes grow at the end of a root, and those roots of that potato plant can spread out, which means that it can be sometimes difficult to guesstimate if you're digging in the right spots, if you're digging far enough away from the plant. Now, when I've seen some people harvesting their potatoes, I've just watched them pull up the entire plant and it'll come up with roots and potatoes and all. Personally, that's never been my experience. Perhaps it's a matter of when you harvest, but I usually find that when you pull up the plants, the roots may come up, but the potatoes are often left in the ground, and so you have to go and dig up and sort through for those potatoes. In the years before I switched to container gardening for my potatoes, I would find that in the spring after my potato harvest, potato plants would pop up, and that of course happened because I had missed a potato when I was harvesting and it stayed dormant throughout the winter and then sprouted and grew into potato plant in the spring. Of course, with growing potatoes in containers, you don't have to worry about missing any of the potatoes because you just dump it out onto a tarp. You sort through the soil, and you have to make sure that you sort through the soil thoroughly, but once you have, there's really no way that you can miss a potato. My 4th and final reason for switching to growing my potatoes in containers, and perhaps this is the most important one to me, is that you don't spear your potatoes. When you're digging up potatoes in the ground, it's very easy to accidentally cut one in half if you're using a shovel, or spear it if you're using a fork. And since you're often digging into the soil multiple times around the plant, it's very easy to spear multiple potatoes. Unfortunately, once a potato has been cut into, it really can't be stored. You have to eat it immediately. Personally, I just find that when you're growing potatoes in a container and you don't have to use a spade or fork and you can just dump it out, it's a whole lot easier and it's a whole lot nicer to get whole intact potatoes that you can cure and you can store, and you don't have to worry about eating immediately. And I don't know about you, but personally I get a little bit squeamish when a cut end is exposed to the dirt, because I find that no matter how much I wash it, you can still usually see a discoloration, which grosses me out. Those were my 4 reasons for why you should grow potatoes in containers, not in the ground. If you're interested in seeing more about how I grow potatoes, I encourage you to check out my planned garden improvements for 2018 video. I'll put that card up top. Basically half of that video is all about my plans for how I'm going to be growing my potatoes this year. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in seeing more, please hit that subscribe button. If you think that you have a friend who might find this topic interesting, please share this video with them. And until next time, stay wildly green.